In the 1960s, Alaska was seen as a land of opportunity because of its proximity to Russia and its plentiful supply of seafood, gold, and oil. The 49th state of the Union held both military and commercial incentive for the United States mainland. However, this narrative of progress and opportunity stood juxtaposed to Alaska's geography, defined by its isolation. These rural communities, dotted across vast mountainous terrain and lush alpine woods, require constant supplies of resources and manpower to maintain. Yet, little had been done to standardize statewide communication. At this time, a hodgepodge of underground pipes laid in the early 1900s connected the state, carrying telephone and power lines across the untapped wilderness. This so-called mukluk communication system was meant to weather any storm, from torrential downpour to nuclear attack, and acted as the beating heart of Alaskan infrastructure. But with different police stations and fire departments running on separate, disjointed radio frequencies, and with sparse, patchy contact to the lower 48, little could be done if this vital communication was disrupted.
I think first you just need to, recognize that it's 1964, so we're dealing with a completely different, communications landscape as we are now. There was phones in Anchorage, and there was radio, there was some TV, and that was about it. I think there were 2 TV channels at the time.
Alaska was the perfect stage for a disaster, and disaster it did receive. It's Anchorage, March 27th, 1964. And a seismograph in the Prince William Sound area detects a spike, the rumblings of a coming crisis.
Screaming with fright, the children toppled over in their chairs. Again and again the house shook.
It looked like a bomb might have hit it or something.
His head was bloody, but he was injured, but he might be a fatality. That's not for sure yet.
To the structure of the International Airport terminal. This is Gina Chance now returning you to Bob Fleming downtown.
When the Great Alaskan Earthquake of 1964 severed the thin communication connecting Alaska, Jeannie Chance, a KENI reporter in Anchorage, used her personal radio transmitter to broadcast information in the immediate aftermath of the quake. Her words held her community, her state, and her country together under a time of great distress, coordinating emergency responses, connecting lost family members, and relaying information of the devastation worldwide. The earthquake, along with Jeannie Chance's response, helped influence modern crisis communication, set the foundation for the field of disaster studies, and revolutionized the United States response to devastating geological events.
As a result of that, essentially every other large subduction zone earthquake around the world sort of falls in the shadow of what we learned from the 1964 earthquake.
Jeannie Chance's quick thinking and communication during the Great Alaskan Earthquake not only saved lives, but was for many the key to understanding during a time of crisis. The time is 5:42 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 1 minute after the quake. A local hydroelectric plant crumbles under its own weight. Railroad tracks stood twisted and contorted. Where the Turn-Again neighborhood once stood was left a field of untraversable rubble in the wake of a devastating landslide. Jeannie Chance was frantically driving home to see how her family had weathered the disaster. A Texan native, Jeannie had grown up in a suburb of Dallas. When she was young, her family was consumed by poverty, but despite this, she would go on to graduate from North Texas State University and conduct research at Baylor. A determined communicator, Jeannie wanted a job in media, but found herself continually running into barriers as a woman. After marrying her husband, Winston Chance, in 1947, the couple's financial problems and troubled relationship prompted them to head north.
Way up north to Alaska, way up north to Alaska.
Winston arrived ahead of the family, taking numerous trips around Alaska through the 1950s, and took up a job as the only car salesman in Anchorage. Jeannie, along with her 2 sons and 1 daughter, moved up in the summer of 1959. The Alaskan Territory, being much more open than many other states at the time, allowed Jeannie Chance to obtain a job as a KENI reporter. By the time of the earthquake in 1964, her communicative nature, along with her strong and authoritative personality, had transformed her role from the host of a cooking show to the lead reporter of the station. When the earthquake struck, Jeannie Chance knew she was one of the only people in Anchorage with a personal radio transmitter. Rushed to the local police station in hopes of helping in any way possible. What she found was complete chaos. Each station could not contact each other, and there was no coordination whatsoever. The civil defense consisted of only 2 people for the entire Prince William Sound area and did not have any protocol for such geologic disasters. Jeannie handed the local sheriff her transmitter. He told her to broadcast the information herself, but her role in crisis communication would quickly escalate. Jeannie would set up a makeshift radio station on the back of her car, and in the coming hours she would speak to public officials, ranging from police officers and firemen to doctors and even the mayor, George Shurock, but also everyday people who witnessed the events from different parts of the town. This rapid compilation of knowledge allowed Jeannie to paint a clear picture of the devastation and organize the hundreds of volunteers eager to help.
All line personnel of the Chugach Electric Association report to work as soon as possible.
Jeannie would remain on air for the next 48 hours, broadcasting directly to the houses of her community. To the people of Anchorage, information was a form of comfort, and her reassuring nature and natural leadership organized and mobilized individuals all around Alaska. This system was able to develop an environment torn by disaster and free of any governmental administration. Her words alone would assemble a group of over 300 men and women with no professional training who, equipped with climbing gear and heavy machinery, searched the wreckage. This directly reduced the total death toll from the hundreds buried deep in the rubble to only 12 people in her local area. The calming nature of this organization and exertion of all available energy to the cleanup effort cannot be overstated. Every person experienced something different that day, but Jeannie's voice connected each of them and helped every person understand that they were not alone. Due to Jeannie broadcasting essential information and her reassuring voice, no mass panic ensued, and thus no looting was reported in the entirety of Alaska. Because of Jeannie Chance, the people of Anchorage and the rest of Alaska came together as the world around them fell apart.
In the following weeks, transcripts of Jeannie Chance were transmitted over more than 100 different radio broadcasting stations throughout the world. Without knowing it, Jeannie had become the voice of Alaska and helped others thousands of miles away relate and understand the devastation of the quake. This helped raise awareness and bolster support for the cleanup effort, boosting America's scientific response and allowing for the economic rebound of Alaska in the 4 years leading up to the discovery of oil in 1968. The long-term effects of this mobilization and nationwide awareness revolutionized the modern understanding of crisis communication. Data collected through The Ohio State University developed the field of disaster studies. They used Jeannie Chance and Anchorage's ability to organically organize to study how communities react to devastating geologic events and, ironically, wrote proposals that helped formulate the modern role of the civil defense, which encompasses much more than simple nuclear threats. Despite her integral role in the immediate aftermath and lasting impacts on future events, the praise that Jeannie Chance received was often laced with implied malice. Many were amazed that a woman could do such a thing and were skeptical of her actions without the help of a male. They accused her of being self-absorbed and fake, saying that the true heroes were the first responders. Yet, Jeannie was humble. She never once claimed her actions as heroic and praised others as the true heroes. A tipping point would occur 1 month after the quake, when Jeannie applied for a raise at KENI. She was denied because, quote, Jeannie was receiving the highest pay that a woman could justifiably receive. She quit that day and later divorced Winston. Fueled by her frustration, she was determined to make change in her community, and thus she began her career as a politician, serving 3 terms in the House of Representatives and 1 term in the Senate. Being one of the first women to serve on the Alaskan state legislature, Jeannie Chance would bring a new perspective to a male-dominated industry and continue her dedication to communication through the 1960s and 70s. Jeannie would raise awareness for domestic violence, advocate for equity among workplace environments, and in 1970 pass laws partially legalizing abortion within the state of Alaska, 3 years before Roe v. Wade. The Great Alaskan Earthquake destroyed the communications infrastructure that connected the state and rendered local officials unorganized and stunned in its wake. Jeannie Chance, a local KENI reporter, used her personal radio transmitter to stitch together her broken community by facilitating cleanup, connecting those of differing experiences, and painting a clear picture of the overall devastation. Her actions would go on to influence modern crisis communication, and her words acted as the voice of Alaska during a time of great distress, bolstering public support for the cleanup and facilitating Alaska's so-called economic miracle. Without Jeannie Chance, the Great Alaskan Earthquake of 1964 would have crippled the state, and the local Anchorage area would have lost hundreds more.
Things that she did mattered to a lot of people in very real ways that continued on. People may not even know that they were affected by her, but they were.
Although Jeannie's actions seem small in the face of a great disaster, and although her name may fade into obscurity, those that were impacted will never forget.